Some people ask, why do I have to keep doing this once I've started? Why can't I just graduate from the way of beauty, so to speak? Well, the simple answer is you don't have to keep doing this, but our hope is that once you've been introduced to these practices, you will want to keep them in your lives because you find that by continually doing them, they give you a life that is worth living. The transformation that comes through the way of beauty, we have found, must be maintained by ongoing practice. This is consistent with every spiritual practice that we know of, or that I know of. If you are a Christian, for example, you go to church every Sunday. Why is that? Well, because as fallen people and left to our own devices, we will always likely drift away from God. The relationship we have with Him erodes, and in time, sometimes even is separated altogether. We end up in a state of mortal sin. And so even the best of us stray, and we need to continually to examine our lives and turn back to God. If we've sinned, we ask for forgiveness and allow Him to draw us closer to Him again. And we know that He will always welcome us back if we ask Him to do so. These habits give us the chance to return to God. This is the habits of the way of beauty process before we have strayed too far. We don't have to wait until we're desperately unhappy before we recognize there's a problem and redirect our course. And so the question then is, how do we build a sustainable practice? How do we embed those habits in such a way that we're likely to keep them going? Well, first of all, we have to develop those habits, and that might take a bit of work. We have to apply ourselves. Perhaps we do this under the guidance of a mentor who introduces us to the daily and weekly routine. Or it might be that you start in a way of beauty group or a small community that meets regularly and talks about doing these things. And over time, you will add the prayers and perhaps the Psalms and the daily meditations in accordance with a steady rhythm of practice. And you find that they become habitual. And then after that, think about doing it with a mentor. But this community, if it's doing its job, will reinforce the idea of continually doing it. That's why we meet regularly and we try to be accountable to others. 12-step groups, which I said the Way of Beauty group looks to for inspiration, do the same thing. They encourage people to keep coming back, as they put it, week after week for the same reason, because we know that without that continual reinforcement of the need for it, we will likely drift away. Having said that, if you have another process or program that keeps you connected to God, then by all means stay with that. As a general rule in the spiritual life, the benefits only endure, however, whichever one you choose when the practices are maintained continuously. So for some of you, this might sound like heavy lifting, a millstone around your neck. But for those of us whose lives have been deeply changed by this process, and certainly a transformed mind, continuing the practices is something that in time, at least, we genuinely want to do. I know that for myself, I grew to love doing them, not just the result of them, but actually enjoying them in themselves. And whenever I begin to feel restless or unhappy, I recognize that it is a signal that it's time to correct my course again. And these practices become not a burden, but a lifeline, a reliable way back to peace and joy. There is another dimension as well, the desire to serve others. When I was transformed by this process, when I experienced this change, I wanted to pass this on. I wanted to share it with others so that they could experience it too. That's why I'm here recording this right now. We discover, I think, when we go through this, that we've stepped into something infinite, it is not a zero-sum game. My succeeding in it, if I can use that phrase, does not is not at the expense of someone else who must fail. It's open to everybody, and as many who wish there are who wish to share in it. I have found that the old spiritual axiom is true, that the more I give away, the more I receive. Passing it on brings me joy and a sense of fulfillment in our life. And I really enjoy seeing others transformed by receiving the same gifts that I have received. And it spurs me on also to enjoy the fruits of an even richer life and a deeper relationship with God. So here I am, 37 years after I was first introduced to it, still doing these things. I'm glad to do them. They are not onerous at all. They are liberating. My life just opens up and becomes richer and richer the further I go along on this journey. And what admittedly did begin as a discipline, which I had to develop with some application and work, it has actually relatively quickly, it became a new freedom. What started off as practice has become a way of life. And what might have seemed like an obligation has reveals itself to me as the greatest gift that I have ever received. And I hope that you may receive it too.